Chapter 11. At first, in those early weeks, Aunt Harriet and Aunt Lillian continued to bring in friends for Maggie. "No man is useless while he has a friend," Aunt Lillian announced, quoting from something. The granddaughter of a woman Aunt Harriet knew from some health society came once, and so did the daughter of a man who mowed the lawn. A boy came. Maggie wasn't sure who he was. He sat at the parlor window, setting the drapery fringes into a tangle of knots, and he left, without having said a word. An hour later, when Aunt Lillian came to tell him his visit was over. But no one ever came back, and no one ever invited Maggie anywhere. In time, the aunts gave up on their invitations, and no one came at all. Each afternoon, Maggie walked home from school alone, hurrying past pairs of girls. All those pairs of girls with canvas bags slung over their shoulders and handfuls of peanuts cupped at their mouths. Sometimes someone would call after her, "Saggy, baggy, faggy Maggie," and the name would hit the back of her head in 4 solid punches. But she would walk fast, keeping her eyes fastened on the outline of the gray stone building rising above the trees, her home now. Her only visitors were the backwoods girls, and they came every day. "Ooh, what's this?" they asked as Maggie showed them around the kitchen. "That's a stove," she explained. "Watch what happens when I turn this handle." "Ooh, how scary," they cried as a circle of blue flames sprang up without warning. No one came even to visit her aunts. Uncle Morris didn't come. Maggie hadn't seen him since that first day when he stood in the garden doorway and admired her in her aunt's curlers and silver slippers streaked with grass juice. "Enchanting," he had exclaimed, and then again, "enchanting," as Maggie struggled up the stairway with her aunts. "Morris, be still," one of them had called down to him as Maggie tried to yank her elbow away from her aunt's grip. "Morris," another one snapped, "I think it's time you took your leave." "Ah, my leave," he had called back, and then, "Has anyone seen my leave?" By now, they were at the top of the stairs, and Maggie was trying to kick first one aunt and then the other. "Maggie, have you seen my leave?" More struggling, and then, from farther away, "What a shame to lose one's leave." A pause. "Leaves don't grow on trees, you know." "Morris!" both aunts had called down together as they steered Maggie across the upstairs hall. Then, "I will be back," he had said. "I will be back before the first snowflake." And those were the last words of his she had heard. There had been some snowflakes, early ones, and Maggie had wondered about him that day as she gazed through the frozen tracings on her classroom window, and later on when she hurried beside the whitened blades of grass on her way home. Would his silver-headed walking stick and black bowler be hanging on the clothes rack when she opened the door? But he hadn't come, and her aunt's hat, one black and one green, swung alone on the dragon arms in the front hall. The house was always silent now. The two aunts moved about as though on tiny rubber wheels, gliding from room to room, polishing a tabletop, lifting a vase, replacing it. Each afternoon, Aunt Harriet would sit at the roll-top desk in the parlor and write letters. Maggie sometimes looked over the envelopes and laid out on the hall table and wondered what the letters said. Did any of them mention her? Among all those letters, did the name Maggie ever appear? Maggie goes to the new academy, maybe. Maggie made her bed today? Maggie is here, even? When her aunt spoke at all, it was to deliver a lecture. 8 to 10 glasses of water a day, Aunt Lillian said before Maggie left for school in the morning. "Water flushes out the system. Dry your feet," Aunt Harriet said when Maggie returned in the afternoon. "Damp feet lower the body's resistance to germ invasions. Only a face with character is a face of beauty," Aunt Lillian said, catching her as she stared at herself in the hall mirror, and Maggie wondered if what she said could be true. Only people with character were pretty. None of the girls in her class had any character at all, but some of them were amazingly pretty. Randy, who had emptied the salt shaker into Maggie's milk container on her 3rd day of school, had hair that glowed like some kind of orange sun around her face. But Alyssa, who told Maggie every day that her brain was defected, had eyes as blue as dragonfly wings. Maggie tried to imagine what her own face would look like if somehow she had what Aunt Lillian called character. Suppose one day a ray of goodness entered her body. Would it show in her face? Would Aunt Harriet and Aunt Lillian look at her and see beauty where just the day before they had seen cracked lips and straight ropes of sticky hair moistened her they had seen cracked lips and straight ropes of sticky hair moistening her cheeks? Don't draw phlegm into your throat like that, Aunt Harriet said when Maggie sat in the parlor window. You will block your ear passages permanently. Think what it would be like to never hear again. She did think of that. What would it be like to be robbed of hearing by too large a plug of phlegm in her throat? What if she never heard again the words of the girls after school, never again heard saggy, baggy, faggy Maggie? What if she never again heard the words of her aunts? How long would it take her in this silent house to notice that she was deaf?